All right, let's try and create a composition function. I have an idea in mind for one. God, Zoom is such garbage. I think I've said that 1,000 times since I started using it. Uh, so this is the idea for the composition function that I want to create right now. In patch and transform composition, we have readiness checks, I think we call them, which are basically ways that you can configure Crossplane to know when a composite resource is ready by knowing when all of its composed resources are ready. So by default, it looks at the ready status condition, but you can tell it that just to become ready implicitly, there's none. There's a couple of other things like match string, I think, and whatnot. In composition functions, there is, let's jump to this API. Composition functions speak with each other using gRPC and protobuf, and there is somewhere in here, if I can find it, in the resource type, there's this ready enum, which is like a ternary enum, which has unspecified true or false. I think it would make sense that if your function just return unspecified, I don't know if this is ready or not, then we would look at the status condition, the ready status condition, since most things you're composing are going to be managed resources, which have a ready status condition, which you can go use. But rather than building this in implicitly in Crossplane, when I was talking about it to myself in this issue, I said, hey, maybe we should build this. And then it occurred to me, this could be built as a function. So you could imagine a composition function that basically runs after other composition functions in the pipeline and says, if the other functions in this pipeline did not have an opinion about whether these resources are ready, I should go and try and figure it out automatically. And basically, I should go and look at the status of a composed resource, look at the status conditions of a composed resource, and if it appears to be if it looks like the status condition is ready, then I should return in my run function response that it is ready. So that's what I'm going to try and do now. Just double checking Slack, then share this, and I'll see if anyone's interested in joining. Oh. All right, it's pretty late on Friday afternoon, so I'm not confident that anyone's going to last second join this call with me, so I'll continue talking to myself as best as I can. Apologies if I go silent. I'm not very good at making my inner monologue happen outside my brain. So let's use this template. This is what I've been working on today. This is a template for creating a function. In Go, we expect that there'll be functions in many different languages, but we're starting with Go. It's what most people seem to want when we did a little survey. So this is, it's a template repo. And it's got some advice and guidance that was just what I came up with today for building a function. I'm sure that it is. I'm sure that this experience is not what we want long term. I'm sure it's going to get much better, and I'm sure I got stuff wrong in this guide. I haven't tested yet. That's part of what what I'm doing now is that you're going to look. I can see that I got this raise a new issue link from. Fix that later. So use this template, create a new repository. I'm gonna use that template. I think this is going to be broadly useful, and I have the power, so I'm going to go create it in Crossplane contrib, and I'm going to call it function auto ready. Let's see, a composition function that automatically detects when those resources are ready. I want to fork template, or fork the new repo rather, under my own. GitHub org. Put it into my function order already. That's stream. Verb. Oops, okay. Get into that directory, spell contrib correctly. Oh. All right. So now I've got this new I've got this new oops, just kidding. I'm still looking at function template go repo. I should open the correct file in my editor. So let's see. Crossplane contrib function auto ready is the one that I want. All right, that looks better. Step one, I'm going to just delete almost everything from this repo. Function that automatically detects when composed ready. It considers composed resource ready if side resource observed resources, i.e. the resource actually exists, as status condition type ready. I think this is it. Status true. In future, this function for now. Then go and basically delete the rest of this stuff from the template. And what did I say this was going to be called? Function. So ready. Cool. All right. Step one is if I look at this function thing, it basically says here's where it loads the input type from this file over here. But input types are optional, and I think as it says here, blah, 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 supporting input is optional. You don't need to. And for now, I don't want to. So I'm going to delete that. Then I think I could just delete this entire input directory. At the moment, there's code that's going to generate this input file here. I think I need to just manually delete that for the time being because nothing's going to clean it up. And I also need to go in here and just update my editors feeling sad. Too many things happened at once. Change the name of this function metadata to function already. There's just nothing in this at the moment. All right, function.go became sad for some reason. All right, because I'm trying to print out something from my input. It's just wait. Now, okay. And I need to go into finally go in here, change this to actually be the name of the function that I want. And I keep figuring there's no what do you call it? Make file. in these functions because we don't want them to have a heavyweight development experience. See whether that actually works out or not long term. So I think now I've kind of got everything scaffolded. Let me just go through this little checklist that I wrote for myself earlier. So to turn this into a working function, replace function template go with your function's name in package crossplane.yaml go.mod and any imports. Done. Update input. I deleted that, so I don't need to update it. Run go generate, all that's going to do is reflect the updates to input, so I don't need to do that. And I think I'm up to step 4. Add your function logic to run function in function.go. And then add tests. I did notice that my tests were failing, so I'm just going to leave that for now. Update this README. I did that. So I think I'm kind of just up to the point where I want to update my functional logic. I'm going to pull up this function SDK Go repo. I pushed some code to function SDK Go earlier today. It is probably wrong. It's probably going to change. Oop. Jared, hello.
Hey Nick, how you doing, dude?
Good, thanks. I've been like monologuing to myself on this recording for the last 10 minutes.
Nice. Sorry to interrupt that. Yeah, I heard you talking right when I came in, and then I was like, wait a minute, the participants list is me and Nick's right now. Who was he talking to? Yeah, you're recording it too, right?
Right, yeah. So I figured because I did it last second, and it's 3 o'clock Pacific time, so 90% of the company is probably enjoying their Friday night or asleep right now. I figured I would just record it and I don't know, monologue, but let me do a quick recap for you because you joined at the perfect time. I just basically spent the last 10 minutes doing all of the boilerplate, and you joined just when I was about to like, all right, now I actually have to think about what this function is going to do.
Oh, nice, perfect.
So I was saying to the imaginary audience, done 2 things since we merged the PR for functions. One is I've written sort of 2 functions already. There was the patch and transform function, and then I wrote this. So I've been putting all of these in Crossplane contrib. I wrote this function dummy, which was used for the end-to-end tests for Crossplane. And this function dummy really does very little. It basically just takes as its input what response it should give you, and then it gives you that response. So it's really just useful for testing.
Yep, kind of like the provider no op.
Yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Cool.
So this and the patch and transform function, while writing those, I came up with some small things that would be useful for an SDK potentially for functions. It's probably wrong, like it's probably got like a better developer experience to be found, but it was a start. So I created this SDK package. I populated it yesterday. And it's got a few helpers for building a function, basically. So I made that today, or rather, I made that last night. And then today, where's my tabs? Today I made Crossplane /function template go. Made this template repo that uses the SDK. So it's basically I took like function dummy and pulled out all of the actual functionality. So now it kind of just does nothing and has a bunch of to-dos in here being like add your logic. I think probably the real value in this is it just helps you get all the scaffolding going.
So that's not a function that does Go templates for you that you can call in your pipeline. This is a template repo for the Go language for you to write new functions. Okay, got it.
I did not think about that, but yes, that's a good point. If you want to have a Go templates function, which I think would probably be called function Go templates, but this is a template for writing functions in Go, which is called function template Go. So that'll probably be confusing. We have to think about that. But there's the pattern of like function SDK Go, function template Go. I imagine we might have function SDK Python, function template Python, etc. Oh, by the way, Darren, I also just want to point out that since you and I both work for Upbound, I'd like to be able to share this video with Crossplane. So let's not talk about any with the Crossplane community. So I don't think we would anyway, but let's not talk about any super secret Upbound source. And you can see my screen that I'm sharing, right?
Yeah. I can see you got two browsers or two windows next to each other. One's like an IDE and one's the browser.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice. All right, so the idea that I had for an actual function, let me close down function dummy. I've got the function template that I want. I've got the function SDK that I'm going to need. Is this function that I'm calling function auto ready. The idea was that where is it? I went over this earlier in the recording, so I'll try and say this pretty quickly. Here we go. In a run function response, one of the things the function can respond with is saying, hey, this particular resource that I care about, that I tell you I desire, is ready now. And then the composite resource rather is ready when all the composed resources are ready. But my guess is that, let's say 80% of composed resources are going to be cross-plane managed resources, as opposed to like provider configs or env configs or other types. And managed resources always have a status condition to tell you when they're ready. So it'd be kind of a pain in the butt for function developers to always have to explicitly go check that status condition and then be like, yep, it's ready, and pass that on via the function. So initially I thought we should just teach Crossplane about this, because there's 3 different, it's kind of like what we call like a ternary enum. So rather than just Boolean ready, true or false, there's ready unspecified as the default. I don't know whether it's ready or not, or I don't have an opinion. And then there's true and false. So at first I thought maybe if it's unspecified and it was a composed resource, we would just assume it's ready if its status condition is ready. But I don't like how, and I like that that's convenient for developers, that they don't have to go worry about this thing. But I don't like how implicit and kind of magic it is. So then I thought, what if we added a function that you could opt into, and you would run it at the end of your pipeline, and it would basically go look at every function, every desired resource that other functions had produced. And if they did not have an opinion about whether the desired resource was ready yet, this function would go figure it out for them automatically. So you just kind of tack it onto the end of your pipeline and be like, just, I opt into automatic detection of readiness, basically. And to begin with, I imagine the automatic detection of readiness would be using just the status condition. But you could imagine eventually making it more configurable, kind of like patch and transform readiness checks. You can imagine eventually being like, I don't know, maybe have a configuration that's like a map of types to, or just an array of different ways to figure out whether a composed resource is ready. Does that make sense as kind of a use case, or what the function would do?
Yeah, it does. I haven't thought through some of the details, obviously, at all that you have there. Where my initial reaction was like, "Oh yeah, cool! Like that seems like a highly desirable or highly popular behavior. Where if all the composed resources are ready, the whole thing goes ready, and that should just be the default. But you've thought about it a little bit more, and then being like removing the magicness of that and having people opt in could be reasonable. Yes."
Yeah, the other thing that I think makes me want to push this into a function is, in addition to the fact that it's a bit more explicit, the other thing is, let's say we add support for deriving readiness from just the status condition, and that's the default. Given what we've seen with patch and transform, you can imagine that the people are eventually going to say, hey, it'd be handy to derive readiness in this way or that way. Pardon me. And so the I can imagine people saying, let's see, what else do we have in patch and transform? I think it is readiness checks. It has like a match string or a match bool or a match number or whatever. So you can basically be like, if this field exists in status and has this value, then consider this to be ready. So I can totally imagine people wanting that as well. And then if we just keep adding that to Crossplane, then it kind of has some of the drawbacks of where we got to with PNT. It gets complicated and also just takes a long time. Someone opens a PR, let's say 2 weeks after we ship Crossplane 1.14, and then they got to wait until Crossplane 1.15 to kind of have that functionality in Crossplane. So if we put it in a function instead, it just means that that function can grow and iterate quickly and separately from the rest of Crossplane, and it just sort of makes it more granular.
And that's actually kind of interesting too. And we definitely don't want to, halt your progress here and make the stream go longer than we want to. But it's interesting that you bring that up, because that kind of like you could take that concept there and go further with it of, modular pieces of what's done in patch and transform, all these different like pieces of the functionality there could each then turn into functions where you can like, pick and choose the behavior that you want for your pipeline. You can iterate on it quickly instead of having it all tied to core crossplane. That's kind of an interesting concept. I can only imagine there's more than just there'd be other ones of these besides just dealing with readiness checks and setting readiness checks,
Yeah, no, I kind of was thinking some of the same while I was talking through it. At the very least, you could imagine breaking out things like extracting connection secrets and readiness checks, as if you kind of think of what the nascent patch and transform function does, or what just patch and transform does broadly. It's kind of patch or create the managed resources, create the composed resources rather, patch them, transform them with data from the XR, patch the XR with data from the composed resources, and then get the connection details from the composed resources to push them to XR, and then determine whether the composed resources are ready so that we know whether the XR is ready. I could imagine breaking that out into like those 4 broad areas, and you could imagine going super granular. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. You could imagine like every patch type being its own type of, function. That might be a little much, but that's a cool idea, something to think about a bit later. But for now, let's think about this. So first step is we want to get desired resources, and I'm going to try and remember off the top of my head, maybe not what the
and then so what you're doing right now, Nick, to bring it back full circle here, so you are implementing the function that would be a reusable function that folks could use to do readiness check type of functionality. You're currently implementing the details of that reusable function, and you're also then trying to use the SDK to first, like, I guess, put it through some of its paces, and then maybe see where there's like obstacles and stuff too, or things
exactly.
we can soothe out. Like, just get it some mileage here, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, so just before you joined the call, basically all I did was create a new repo in Crossplane contrib using this template, fork it in my own GitHub org, and open up the editor and rename things and whatnot. So I literally just got to the point where I was like, cool, ready to start thinking about how we'll actually do the interesting part. So you joined at the perfect time.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
So there's not too much in this SDK at the moment. Part of what the SDK does is gives you some plumbing for main.go to like pass the CLI and just like set up a new function server, which I imagine a lot of people will just main.go will get stamped out like this for them, and they'll just never touch it. But if they do want to go add more CLI flags, or they're really advanced, or they want to, have special gRPC setup or whatever, they can. But everything that you really care about is in function.go. It's in this run function type. And the first thing I want to do is, given that this function's goal is to basically update design resources that other functions have produced, I want to get the desired resources from those from the other pipeline functions that run in the pipeline. So Crossplane's going to send all of that desired state that any function that's run before this one has accumulated. It's going to just send it as part of this run function request. And there's a package in the SDK called request. Yeah, there we go. .get desired composed resources from this request. All right, I think that can return an error. Yep. So the pattern I've been using for error handling, we'll see whether this makes sense. But for something like getting desired composed resources out of the request, it sort of should just work, unless it should basically just work. It would be like something has gone horribly wrong if it can't pass them out of the request. So what I've been doing is saying, if this error is nil, you just want to return the response, and nil, you don't want to actually return an error from the function, because that's going to sort of the gRPC call is going to fail there. It's going to be like the server failed, which is, I think, supposed to be more indicative that well, actually, I don't know. In this case, it could be appropriate. In that case, it would be like kind of getting a HTTP 500 or something like that, as opposed to getting a payload back that said, I tried to do your thing and here's what went wrong. So what I'm going to do is do response dot fatal, add that to the response, and then I'm going to wrap this error with cannot get desired resources from one of the to-dos that we have in the SDK repo. One of the issues that we want to work through is I found that in the now 3 functions that I've written, I'm personally using the logging and errors packages from Crossplane runtime because I like to use them and I'm used to them. But I think there is a question of whether we want those to be part of the functional 3 experience or whether we just use like the new slog structured logging package, maybe from the Go SDK, from like Go standard library rather, and maybe just use like the errors from the Go standard library because they kind of do everything that we want to do. They just have a different API. But I like what I like, and this is my function, so I'm gonna use them as I like. So what this is doing is basically saying if we hit an error while getting this out, don't return an error like at the gRPC level, don't like fail the whole request, but do basically add a fatal response to the request. And what that's going to do is send back, it's going to basically be like success, we sent back a response, like forming a response didn't fail, but the response is like fatal error, this whole function pipeline should be like something went horribly wrong, stop running the function pipeline. There's 3 kinds of responses you can return: normal, warning, and fatal. Normal and warning will produce Kubernetes events. Crossplane will produce Kubernetes events. So if you return a normal result, that will create a normal event associated with the XR with whatever you told it to. So typical warnings. I think Stefan just added some guidelines around events for Crossplane that we should probably document for function authors. I took a quick pass in the template repo, but you don't want to be returning events left, right, and center. But fatal, whereas a normal warning event would just continue the pipeline, like the pipeline would keep running. The next, if there were any functions in the pipeline after, they would keep running. Fatal just stops the pipeline. Any functions after your function don't get run, and the composition just returns an error and is like, it's kind of what it sounds like, fatal. All right, but then so we've got desired resources from the request. We also, I think, need observed resources from the request because we basically can't tell whether something is ready or not if it doesn't exist yet. So just going to copy and paste that. So in our request, we'll get the observed composed resources, which is any composed resources that actually exist in all of their status, and the desired resources, which is what functions have said should exist on this iteration. Because composition functions is actually powered now by server-side apply, that gives us a lot of cool functionality. But one thing to be aware of is that if you return a desired resource like the first time your function is run, you have to return that desired resource every time. If you don't return that desired resource, Crossplane assumes that means you don't want it anymore and it's going to delete it, unless another function happens to return the exact same desired resource. And similarly, because of the benefits of server-side apply, if your function returns a resource and says, I want spec.widgets to be 100, and then next time it returns that resource, but it doesn't include spec.widgets, Crossplane's going to be like, oh, you don't want that field anymore, it'll go delete that field. So with functions, we now support deleting fields from composed resources for the first time. Another benefit of server-side apply is that we actually support intelligent merging of composed resource arrays and all that kind of stuff if the composed resources have the appropriate notation on their CRDs to tell us how to merge those, which none of them do today, but we've set up a path for that. So basically now, whoops. So for what is desired? Desired is going to be a map, I think, of where is it? Desired composed resource is basically a map of resource name to desired composed resource, and so is
and how come your IDE doesn't tell you that? I think it just said var, right? It didn't give you like the type resolution there.
No. It did. It's just
Ah,
I have a habit sometimes of maybe being too clever, and I made, despite the fact that this is a map of name to blah, it has a concrete type of design
right,
composed
right, right.
resources.
That's what it
Maybe
was.
it's maybe a little much, but that means it's interesting because that meant I had to click through and be like, wait, what is this type? Is it a map of such and such? Right. So, but so that means for name range. So we iterate all over all the desired resource, and actually let's call this dr for desired resource, and then let's say basically, and then if okay, so if this resource doesn't exist in the composed resources, we just continue. There's really nothing to do there because basically it's, it's not going to be ready. Our goal is to figure out by looking at the current state of the resource, is the resource ready? So if there is no current state of the resource to look at, like if we didn't observe it, if Crossplane didn't see that this resource already exists and pass it to our pipeline, we can't know whether it's ready or not. So basically, if this desired resource does not appear
Uh,
in the observed resource state, it's
yeah.
inherently not ready because it doesn't exist, basically,
Yeah,
or at least.
we're about to request like desire. We want this to be created. Please, Crossplane, please create this resource for us, but it didn't exist before, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what you might imagine is, let's say that someone's used the Go templates function, which doesn't exist yet, but let's say that someone's used the Go templates function and they've run that as the first function in their pipeline, and then this is running afterwards. And let's say the Go templates function has just rendered out one desired composed resource, like a RDS instance or whatever. The very first time that particular XR or claim gets created that uses the composition that uses that function, um, the function's going to run. It's going to be like, here's my desired resource, but that resource doesn't exist yet, so that function is not going to be passed anything in its observed resources apart from the XR.
Correct. Yep.
And so when we see that, what we're going to see is the desired resource from the function that ran before us, or functions, in this case, there's only one. And we're going to see, okay, the Go templates function said it wants this resource, but that doesn't appear in the observed resources, which tells us that that resource doesn't actually exist yet. It's about to be created. So we're not going to try and figure out if that's ready or not because it doesn't exist yet. So let's add a comment like this.
Yep.
If this desired doesn't exist in the resources, it can't be ready because it doesn't, hasn't, let's just say doesn't exist. Doesn't yet exist. Now, the next thing we want to do is figure out whether the previous function or functions have any opinion about whether it's ready or not. So, if dr.ready is not equal to ready unspecified, continue. In this case, what this means is a previous function in the pipeline either said resource was explicitly ready or explicitly not ready. We just want to automatically determine, say only, readiness for resources where no other function has opinion about their readiness. These two whether who's ready. Okay, so now we know so now we've got to do the interesting part. which is figuring out whether it is ready or not. So we're going to look at the observe resource, which is in OR. And OR.resource should be a unstructured composed resource, which is kind of just really a deep down inside. It's just a map of string to object. It's kind of like deserialized JSON data in Go, but it's wrapped in a type that has a bunch of convenience getters and setters as well. And so I think that actually one of those is get status conditions, maybe? What you got for me, compose.unstructured? I really thought that you had a, yeah, get condition. There we go. It's handy. Get condition. And then v1 dot condition. What kind of, I think this condition is defined in the xpv1 package. Yeah. Let's add this xpv1 import.
Man, you know our the resource model really, really well, dude. That's really impressive.
I feel kind of slow at it. I mean, like
Yeah.
I made a lot of these things, so that explains it. But then, like, I really don't get to code very much anymore, like, or as much as I would like. So I feel pretty rusty a lot of the time these days. So let's see. That's going to get this condition. So get the observe resource, and then I think, how does this work? I think it's going to just return me like an empty condition, basically. Oh yeah, it's going to return me a condition with condition unknown. And then yeah, well, this is, it's just ifc.status equals, and now I think this one is actually from, yeah, v1. It's from like the core v1 API. Let's rename this to core v1. Jared, do you use Visual Studio Code, or are you a what's the other one that everyone likes?
Goland or whatever. No,
Okay.
I am a VS Code person, and if you recall on the last podcast that we were getting interviewed for, I got double honked at for my Microsoft preference there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so that scar is still healing right now, my friend.
Why don't you like this? Help me. Because I don't know how to check. I'm actually just going to do this extra variable feels.
Does and so when you ask for like get the condition of a particular type, you said that you're guaranteed to get some sort of value back from that. Like you'll always get a yeah, it's non-nil. Is what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm just messing around with what I want here. So I think that this is kind of most of it. So if c.status is condition true, so that basically means our observed resource, we pulled out its ready status condition and we saw that it was true. So I think now we just want to set dr.ready to true equals resource.ready true. That's as status condition with type ready status true. We set its readiness true. It's kind of weird to have like desired readiness, because is this ready or not is kind of more about an observed resource, but it was hard to find a way to reflect this in the API that made sense, so we just put it under desired resources. And so that's basically the whole function. The last thing we have to do is response.set desired compose resources response side, and this one can return an error as well, so we use the same pattern of.
And if it was still false, like if the observed resources ready status was false, we essentially don't do anything there, right? We just keep not
Yeah.
touching it. Okay.
Yeah, part of the reason I broke this out into a separate step is that once I've got this logic pretty much done, which I think I have, I'm gonna add some logging statements. One of the nice things about the new functions design is, of course, this function is just running in a pod. It has a logger, and it can just like emit log statements basically, and you can go debug it by looking at the pod logs. It might be nice to emit an event as well. I would need to think about, we would only want to emit an event the first time it became ready, which I think we actually can, because if the function's already if the desired resource is already reported that it is ready. No, actually, I'm not sure we can. Sorry. Just thinking out loud there. I was basically trying to think of under like the guidance we have for events, where we don't want to just emit an event every time. We only want to emit an event when something changes. Could we effectively calculate that? But I don't think that we have enough context to know whether this is the first time that we've set an event. I guess we could short circuit. We could say if the XR, if the observed composite resource is already ready, then it's safe to assume that all resources have been reported ready. So we could skip it then, but it's not a perfect heuristic. So I'll just add log statements for now. We can worry about that later. But yeah, finally we want to actually like write back our desired resources to the response to make sure. One thing that's really important with functions is that you can be passed desired resource that has come from previous functions before you, and you need to make sure to copy all of that through to your response. This response.to method, which is part of the scaffolded out function, actually does that. It basically creates a new response, and it just copies the desired state from the request. As just kind of like a safeguard to make sure you don't forget and drop all the desired state, because then it just won't come out the other end of the pipeline. But so you end up in this interesting spot where, the way that I would say it is, if your function doesn't have an opinion about a thing, an update to the XR or a new composed resource or whatever, it shouldn't touch it and should pass it through unmutated, untouched. But it is allowed to have an opinion. It's valid to write a function that looks for any composed resource named Joe and deletes it for some reason or whatever from what the previous functions wanted to do. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you're allowed to. Just basically don't accidentally drop desired state from a previous function is maybe a good way to put it. So let's see, what's some useful stuff to do here. Let's do, oops, f.log.debug, down desired resources, count and when desired.
Oh, that's the pager, Nick.
Oh, really? Is that the customer support pager?
It is. I will be dropping off now, my friend. Thanks for the live stream. Hopefully I'll come back soon.
No worries. I think the rest of this is going to be like testing and building this function and seeing how that works. All right. Thanks,
All right,
man.
see ya.
Monologuing. All right. So debug logging, and then testing this function, and then going and actually trying to use it somewhere, which will be interesting because we don't have a ton of real functions to test this out with, but I'll do my best. But first, logging statements. Ignoring desired resource that does not appear in. Oops. Actually, I'm going to just make a local copy. The hell's the thing called? Log.with values. Loads resource name. Name. There you go. Make sure I use that. Log.debug. Ignoring desired resource that what do you say about this? It has explicit readiness. Probably not the best way to put it, but figure that out later. Let's see here. I am pretty certain that ready field is, yeah, that is an integer, so that's going to probably end up printing. That's probably just going to end up printing 0, 1, or 2. So just add a to-do there, except not at the end of the line. This one I feel like says log.info. Now, I also think that after I get the observed state, I like to make log loth. I like to include the name of the XR in these logs so that you know what we are talking about. Could be something like observed. Oh. I don't have the observed request resource at the moment. These log statements. I need to get the observed compose resource out of there so that I can add it to this log statement. So I just call that OXR quest.get observed composite resource from that request. If there is more error handling. Cool, there we go. And now I should be able to do oxr.resource.get name. Probably actually want to include more context about that. Every now and again, I accidentally hit a button which I have never identified that makes every highlighted piece of text lowercase. Okay, something like that. So now our log should have all of that. Let's quickly see if we can add some tests for this. I feel like this is perhaps something that some people will hate, but I like that with the function development experience, you can get some signal as to whether your function works or not by just writing some unit tests that test the logic of this function. Like it's not, it's not an end-to-end test. You need that too. But before you get to end-to-end testing it, you can add a few unit tests. Now, these unit tests exist already, but they are just what the template had, so we're certainly going to fail. So what we want is, let's test the happy path first, which would be, let's see, resource with unknown readiness is true, and let's just call it auto detect readiness. An existing proposed resource with unspecified readiness a ready true status condition should be detected as ready. Okay, let's see, what do we got here? There is no input for this type. There is a reference for how to use must-struct JSON. So let's see, we want to pass this some observed state. So we'll pass it some desired state. In the observed state, we need a composite. You'll always be passed an observed composite. If you weren't, something would have gone horribly wrong. Some slight amount of redundancy here. So we passed stuff through as a hitting about an hour here, so taking a little bit longer than I thought, but I'll blame Channing and Jared for that. In the protobuf types, we use this well-known protobuf type called struct, which just represents arbitrary JSON data. It is a bit of a pain in the butt to use, so as a convenience, we have this must-struct JSON type that you can use to just write JSON in tests and turn it into a struct for you. So in this case, I need to make sure my composite resource has all the bits about a composite resource that I want to extract from it over here. So let's call this test.crossplane.io/v1 because it's not real. Kind test xr metadata is a struct object name my test xr. What is that? Quote, panic. I don't need this input because I used it to know what I wanted to type here. All right. So now that's an observed composite resource, which is good for our test. That means we're going to be able to get our logging data. Now I need to give it at least one observed composed resource, which is a map of resource name to composed resource state, right? Yes. And then let's call this composed resource. Actually, let's call it ready composed resource. Side state copy. Actually, no. What am I doing with my life? Let's think about that in a moment. Resource. This one, I'm going to must struct JSON it as well. Someone observed here. Still, I might have had one too many. My brain is being confused by the position of these braces right now. That is still there. That closes that one. Oh, hang on. I know what's going on here. There are opaque JSON. Okay. Test compose. My test compose resource. Now, I think the important thing really about this resource is let's give it a spec. I think nothing really going to pay attention to this spec, so it's arguably not needed, but just fun. What is needed is the status. Status, there are conditions, which is one of those good things, an array. And it's an array of objects. And let's see. I don't remember this off the top of my head. Type ready. Status true. I think all we care about here in this status. All right, cool. Then desired resources, we basically want pretty much exactly this. Not this function doesn't actually really expect anything about the desired resource. So to be completely honest, this could just be empty, really. In fact, I'll just, why not? So practice. Matter. Cool. Let's test this and see if it blows up. Let's see here. Looks like I probably got one of my must struct JSONs wrong somewhere. Invalid character. New line in string. Oh, that's interesting because it's totally new lines elsewhere. What don't you like about this? Comma, 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 comma. JSON sucks. Comma in the right place. Looks good to me. This is a signal that maybe taking opaque JSON in tests is not a good thing. Line 8, 10. Why don't you like me, JSON? What have I forgotten about how to... Ah! Missing quotation. Cool. All right. And let's see here. You... Oh, I need to flip this in the template. I don't know why I did this, but for some reason, I have one before got. We do it the other way around in like every unit test Crossplane has. So it breaks my brain when I see it in this format. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. That not the output that I expected. Minus God plus 1, minus God plus weight. God plus what? Nope, I'm going crazy. That was the right way around. I already fixed that. So we know we don't want any results from this one. We would expect, we're going to pass through observed state. We would expect to have the same array of desired resources, but I would expect this to be ready. Where are you? Ready true, which seems like it's not. Oh, and yeah, okay. Have an empty resource, sure. Oh, that is. That's super interesting because I can see that we're setting ready to ready true here, and that's green. What's the bets that set design compose resources in the SDK is not working correctly? Unspecified, false, true. Dot ready equals ready true. Then we set it there. Why the heck is that not working? I'm not going crazy. I need other people on this call to tell me what I've done wrong. Status is true, blah, 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 dr.ready. So it was writing to a map. It's not working here. See my great debugging strategy here, because I am not someone who actually uses a debugger, though I probably should learn how to one day. So, pretty sure Rob Python said that printf logging was debugging was great. Well, that's interesting. Guessing this is something to do with my understanding of how mutating a map while you're inside the map works in Go. Or I have, let's see, range of a desire, we get this DR, and we're changing DR ready to true. When it comes out the other end, it is not true. Let's try this. There you go. Cannot assign to struct field design name ready in a map. Oh, there's a fundamental flaw in how this all works. It's good to know. Let's see here. Let's put pipe again. Design resources. Design equals. For the time being, I'm just going to build up a new map. And this is going to require some. I should probably. Oh, hey. Nice. All right, cool. Well, that's good to know. That's going to require some rethinking of the SDK design, I think. All right. Hooray, unit tests. All right, for the time being, and for the interest of time, I am only going to test that happy path there. Let me edit a sad. Cool. See if we can find an editor. Let's do a quick linting of this thing. And let's do a quick go testing of this thing. And then let us compile it. Whoops. Right, deleting my input means that I need to. Oh, interesting. All right, let's get rid of these parts about input. Just don't have any input. Cool. What do they call this function? Auto ready. All right, that seems to work well in the smallest possible way that something could work. Let's we make a better API for dating desired. I actually don't know anything about programming. All right. Step is to basically go try this, but for now, let's make sure it's going to the right place. Looks good to me, based on that 10 seconds of skimming. Merge. All right, now the trick is going to be to actually test this out. Which makes me think I'm maybe going to have to use function dummy to do this. Because that's the only function that I can think of. I'm going to go create a X packages and upbound.io crossplane contrib repo for this. I'm going to do that off screen just because I'm not sure if I have to show anything sensitive to do that. I don't think so, but just to be safe. Get a crossplane contrib org, create repository, and I want to call this repository function auto ready. Create repository. Cool. I wonder if I'm already logged in. So one of the places that we definitely need to figure out is CLI tooling for pushing and building and all that good stuff. I have in github.com/bound/up. One of the things that this has is Docker credential up, which basically will allow Docker to log in to Upbound's marketplace or Upbound's OCI registry. So that allows me to push this to function auto ready here. And then it should be possible to pull that. I see that it has shown up in the marketplace now, or not listed in the marketplace, but is in this repository now. So I'll make some Actually, yeah, let's just update readme.go. Need to do any code generation in this one, so let's get rid of that. This option. No. Let's see here. And package.crossplane.io. We plan to launch these at beta 12, at beta 1. And function order already. Check. Package. This thing. Hmm. And then eh, this is a tricky one. I have to be contrived here. I think just due to lack of real functions at the moment. I haven't actually tried using the patch and transform function end to end yet. Something I want to do today. And I suspect that issue that I just had, mutating a struct that is a map value, will exist in the patch transform function as well. So I need to go check that. So what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably test this end to end using our utility tests. We have a nascent end to end test for functions in here. So using it works. To do so, here we're going to use function dummy to return a then this function. So, all right, let's check this. Let's leave off the desired composite for the purposes of this response. Looks good to me. In the real world, we probably don't want to return that every time. And because this is a NOP resource, which uses provided NOP, I should probably note that in README, I'll do that later. It's just going to become ready automatically and not do very much else with its life. So then we want to run another step in the pipeline. Let's call this automatically detect closed reverses. Add function auto ready. That's what I called this up there. And in theory, that's it. This one doesn't have any input to give, so you just tell it to run that step, and it should just work. Let's see if that's actually true or not. I'm going to test that by opening, just because I'm lazy and I don't want to actually go and do the whole kind cluster spinning upping dance, which is a big pain point of this process right now. Gonna use the fact that that's automated in the Crossplane E2E tests to do that. Or actually, no, I'll what was it? Kind get clusters, get rid of them, and create cluster. Let's actually follow the steps that I put in this template. We got here. Looking for the instructions to install Crossplane from master, which I linked. Here we go to the docs. And all right, there's a copy button. Like these copy and paste things. Who needs the watch command? Just hit up enter a lot. Cool. All right. Actually, need multiple functions, so let's call this functions.yaml. Why don't you just know what I want, computer? Do it. Okay. Back to my previous workspace. So much for this being an hour. We're going up for 90 minutes. Let's get this done in less than 2 hours, hopefully. Thinking. Examples, functions.yaml. For the purposes of this experiment, we need 2 functions. Not how to install Crossplane. Let's go install function order ready, and we are going to want test E2E, manifest, CD, API extensions, functions, API extensions, position, functions, setup. That one. Function dummy as well. It's sad because it doesn't know that these types exist. The up language server plugin, that is. Please language server plugin. Function dummies at v0.2.0. And then, where are we? 6. Vector samples composition. Yellow. Let me copy this guy. It's the directory. Okay. Basically, let's go to examples. Then draw crossplane test E to E manifest API extensions, composition, functions, claim. Oh yeah, and copy it here, please. Okay. See if this thing knows about functions. So one interesting thing about functions is that, as usual, they create function revisions. There is like a moment where it's spinning up and installing and doing its things, and you're not going to be able to use these functions until under status they have an endpoint, which is just the gRPC endpoint that things should be sent to. Let's see if anything goes horribly wrong. Just keeping in mind that we just like merged this PR 2 days ago, so it's possible that everything's terrible and bad. All right, nice. So here we go. Endpoints have appeared for that one and that one. Function order ready and function dummy. You notice they are DNS endpoints. What that means is if we look in this directory, we should have, we should have headless services, which we do not. We seem to have cluster IP services, so that's good to know. It's still going to work. The difference is if you make a headless service, it's not going to give it a cluster IP, and when inside the cluster the service is resolved, it's just going to give like each pod's IP address back. And then that's going to allow gRPC in the way that we've got gRPC set up to load balance requests across all of those pods if you have multiple pods. And in theory, if you just set up one of these function packages to have multiple pods, I actually forget whether we plumb them up to controller config or not yet. But if you were to use controller config or the runtime config that we plan to ship eventually, maybe with 1.14, don't hold me to that. It's a bit of a stretch. Then you could tell the function to have like 5 pods, and Crossplane should round robin load balance across those 5 pods when it sends them requests. But anyway, we now have functions. And so we should be able to position. Oh, what don't you like? Oh, I didn't install the provider that I need to do this. All the XRD. Missing everything. So let's teach Crossplane that that particular type of composite resource exists and install a provider that is going to try and compose. One thing I'm confusing myself about at the moment, though, is it's not obvious to me. Oh, right. I was wondering how this actually became ready in the first place in the E2E test for Crossplane. It's because we actually say explicitly that this resource is should be ready. So we need to not do that here, or it's not going to sort of demonstrate what we want to demonstrate in testing this function. So let's go into this examples directory and setup and composition. And this basically, because this dummy function is returning a response that explicitly says that its compose resource is ready, we would just skip function order ready, which is no fun. So let's actually use our function. Composition.yaml. Cool. Hopefully, Well, you claim you're a not resource. Well, it's allegedly ready, which is promising. Did you do a compose? Yeah, I'm seeing a compose. That seems promising. Oh, that's interesting. Selected composition revision missing. That seems like a bug. Got a couple of these to follow up on. All right. So I didn't actually have this guy emit any events when it said something to ready, but because the composite resource is ready and because the claim is ready, I'm assuming that my function worked. But this output that it was this, I'm doing a compose, which is suspicious. The heck is going on here? Where did you come from, composition? What am I missing? Oh, duh. What I'm missing is that I am in the Crossplane unit tests at the moment, end-to-end tests. So let's tear all of that down. So, well, good to know our end-to-end tests still work. And now, actually in my examples directory. Position. Let's get rid of all of those. Okay. Let's apply all the things. Now let's see. Moment of truth. There we go. Waiting for composite resource to become ready. Oh, well, there you go. That's promising. Claim looks like it's ready. We didn't get that thing. So let's what are we doing? Crossplane system. Let's find our pose. Let's look at the logs. Function dummy, which, if I recall correctly, just says I ran at the moment. Not super helpful, but you know, it's a thing. Now let's look at auto ready. Hooray! Automatically determined that compose resource blah is ready. And it's included the XR stuff that we wanted and the compose resource name. Well, there you go. We just wrote a composition function merely in 96 minutes. So lots to possibly improve here. A couple of bugs found along the way, but I don't know, that tests that my template is ready. I hope that this is helpful for folks. Give it a shot. Raise a bug against Crossplane against the main Crossplane repo. C/C is probably the best way to get our attention and make sure it's not missed for now. Thank you for watching this in the future, if you do in fact watch it. Goodbye.